Hi everybody, this is Giles here again, and welcome to another Bubbly Bulletin. I thought this time I'd do a video so you could see what I look like, so hello everybody, and nice to meet you. Judging from your email addresses, there are people not just from the UK but from Australia and the States as well, and it's great to be talking to people all around the world. Today I would like to sort of refer back to a Bubbly Bulletin a couple of days ago, about a week ago, in which I drew your attention to this little book here. This is a wine list from a company called Waitrose. Now, those of you in the UK will know Waitrose, but for those of you who don't, it's a pretty upmarket supermarket, and they've got a great selection of wines. And I was looking through this the other week and came across this entry for Louis Roederer Brut Premier. Now, it says, still family owned, and uses a high proportion of their own grapes and of reserve wines in their champagnes. Now, this struck me as a classic example of what I call wineese, which is wine experts and champagne experts talking in their own language as if everybody they're talking to is also a wine expert. But what you really need is an interpreter. Because all those things that they said about being family owned and using their own grapes and having a high proportion of reserve wines, I mean, what does all that mean? They don't tell you that. So I'm here to act as your interpreter. Now, in the earlier Bubbly Bulletin I referred to, we looked at what it means to be family owned and what it means to use your own grapes as opposed to buying them in on the open market. So today I'd just like to talk about reserve wines. Reserve wines are nothing more or less than old wines. They're wines that are pressed from the grapes, turned into still wine, and instead of being used to go into a champagne blend, they're put aside into storage to mature for a year or 2 years, and occasionally longer. You have to use reserve wines when you're making non-vintage champagne, because that's what non-vintage is all about. It's a blend of wines from different years, and they use the old wines to compensate for deficiencies in the current year's harvest and to iron out quirks due to the weather and all sorts of other things, so that they have a constant taste and quality year in, year out. Now, these old wines, by virtue of the fact that they've matured a little bit longer, have had time to develop a wider range of flavours and aromas and depth, and so they bring an extra structure and power to the champagne blend. So that's the role they play. Now, as I said, by virtue of how you make champagne, everybody has to use reserve wines in their non-vintage, so there's nothing special in that. And a minimum, I would say, is around about 10 or 15% of reserve wines. But when you see somebody or read of somebody who's using 20% or more, then that's something out of the ordinary, and it's worth you taking a look at. Some champagnes, and in the next part of, or the next videos that's part of this Bubbly Bulletin, I'm going to be talking about one champagne in particular, Charles Heidsieck. They use as much as 40% of reserve wines. Krug use 50% sometimes, or occasionally even more. So that's what reserve wines are all about. They have to be in there, so what you really need to know is the proportion of reserve wines that are in there. But of course, nobody really tells you that, and the person in the shop is never going to know that. So it requires a little bit of investigation, and ask me if you can't find the answer anywhere else, and I'll see what I can do. So there's another Bubbly Bulletin coming up about Charles Heidsieck, so we're going to finish this one here, and I'll see you again in a few minutes. Thanks very much, and speak to you again soon. Bye for now.